That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, we went through and we identified some of the players rising up in rookie draft ADP in the last video. Let's do the exact opposite thing here. And no, these are not players falling down my own rankings. Now, of course, we have all of our rankings available over there on Patreon, but instead, these are going to be players that are just falling down the average draft position data that we have from the rookie drafts that we host on this channel. Now, we are going to be hosting some more rookie mock drafts very soon. Please just make sure you're subscribed. And more importantly, if you want to come out to those mock drafts, you need to make sure that you have the bell next to the subscribe button hit. That way, whenever we go live, you can come out right away, making sure that you have a spot in that mock draft. But yeah, let's not really waste too much time. Of course, go down there, drop a like on the video. It helps us out so much. Leave a comment letting me know who your favorite rookie is on this list with their current evaluation. And oh yeah, real quick side note, I will say that free rookie draft ADP available is over there available on Patreon. Now, yes, the majority of things on Patreon are behind a paywall, but no, the ADP that we have, because it comes from mock drafts that are hosted on this channel, and because I know it's a very useful tool, I just want to provide it for everyone for free over there on Patreon. So please make sure you go check it out. But that's it. Let's dive into this list, and let's start it off with a wide receiver that is going to be falling consistently to that wide receiver 2 tier. It's going to be Terrace Marshall. And with Terrace Marshall, I mean, nobody's arguing for him to be in the tier of wide receiver 1s with a guy like Jamar Chase, really in his own tier there. But we know beyond that, I mean, you have that giant tier of wide receiver 2s. Devonta Smith is kind of in a weird spot where most people are going to have him as the wide receiver 2. Most people are not even going to consider putting him behind a player like Elijah Moore. But just say you throw Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith out of the scenario. There you're looking at a scenario where you have so many rookie wide receivers that are all in the same range, in my opinion. You have a Jalen Waddle, you have an Elijah Moore, you have a Rondale Moore, you have a Terrace Marshall, you have a Rashad Bateman, probably a few other players that I'm forgetting to mention just because that tier is so large. But nonetheless, I mean, if we are talking before the NFL draft, Terrace Marshall was sometimes going at the very top of that list. And right after the NFL draft, we saw Terrace Marshall take that fall. And we're not talking about that fall. Obviously, the NFL draft is going to change things. We are talking about the fall that he has seen since the week after the NFL draft to where he is going now. Now, technically, he only falls 1 or 2 spots in our ADP. But if you actually looked at his overall ADP value, it's significantly lower. And it's because you have a wider distribution on where you are seeing Terrace Marshall go in this past set of mocks. I mean, we actually had a player, just say like Kadarius Toney, go ahead of Terrace Marshall in one of these mock drafts that we did host, which in my opinion is absolutely crazy. He actually falls behind Trey Sermon in the official ADP. That's something that we predicted. We knew that Trey Sermon was going to be rising up, but now it looks like Terrace Marshall is almost the consensus last wide receiver in that tier. And I don't know if we can say that's a good decision. Now, of course, you can make the argument that you would rather have a guy like Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore all over Terrace Marshall. But I think that they are so close, and it's just silly to say that any one of those wide receivers is a much better bet than Terrace Marshall, because you're looking at him as a player that literally checked every single box that matters coming into the NFL. I mean, he has the size, he has the athleticism, but more importantly, he has the production with context, where yes, I mean, he wasn't overly productive as a true freshman or a true sophomore, but you look at what was going on in that scenario. He was playing on a team that had Jamar Chase. He was playing on a team that also had Justin Jefferson. So you're not going to be expecting Terrace Marshall to be highly productive in his first 2 seasons. Yet despite that, you actually have Terrace Marshall with a very impressive end to his true sophomore year campaign, which classifies him as his second year breakout. And now, of course, we don't need to dive too far into Terrace Marshall. We're so far in the season that we pretty much know everything about these rookies at this point. But what I want to focus in on is the situation in Carolina and why I think Terrace Marshall is currently undervalued in Dynasty. And that is, it looks like he is currently parked behind a crowded depth chart behind both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And while that is true for 2021, we understand the majority of the time that you are drafting these rookie wide receivers, you are not drafting them to be able to start them in your lineup right away. I mean, very rarely are you going to get a Justin Jefferson. Very rarely are you going to get a CeeDee Lamb. More importantly, you're looking for those wide receivers that have the talent profile that the following season after their rookie year, that's when they can start producing for you. And I think that's what Terrace Marshall can do, because you look at it and Robbie Anderson only has 1 year left on that contract, where Terrace Marshall looks like he's most likely going to be taking over in 2022. So Terrace Marshall, I think you look at the talent profile, you look at the fact that there is a path for that depth chart to clear up, and if he continues to fall in ADP and maybe you have a rookie draft later on in the offseason, you just take advantage. Okay, so now let's go down to a boring player going way later in drafts, but these players are probably the most important to talk about just because they don't get the same kind of coverage. But let's talk about Hunter Long. Now, I'm surprised to see this fall from Hunter Long. He falls all the way to the 10th pick in the 3rd round in our recent ADP. Now, he's going behind players that I would never consider taking over him, given what we saw with the landing spots. A guy like Tylan Wallace, who is just buried on that Baltimore depth chart, and even if he was able to rise up to just say be the wide receiver 3 there, I mean, what is the upside with a player like that on a low volume passing attack? But with Hunter Long, you're actually looking at him, you're going, yes, okay, the tight end profile isn't fantastic. Now, we dive into this with our Dynasty rookie draft guide, but when you're looking at these tight ends, what you're more so looking for is you want to see elite athleticism, you want to see size, you want to see them have at least 15% of their college passing offense in college. And I will say that you don't necessarily need to see the draft capital. Draft capital means a lot less at the tight end position than it does with other spots. But nonetheless, I mean, Hunter Long, he's not a bad athlete. He doesn't have that elite athleticism that we want, which is why you can't rise him up to be a 2nd round player. But beyond that, he does get selected in the middle of the 3rd round by the Miami Dolphins. He was a fantastic a fantastic receiving tight end at Boston College. And if you look at Mike Gesicki, yes, Mike Gesicki's a much better tight end in my opinion, but based on what the Miami Dolphins have shown us time and time again, it doesn't look like they are committed to Mike Gesicki in the long haul. I mean, Mike Gesicki only has 1 year left on his rookie contract, so maybe they drafted Hunter Long to be that replacement, and they're going to let Mike Gesicki go. So very similar to a Terrace Marshall, I think Hunter Long is currently a bet that you're not making for 2021. You're never making a bet on a rookie tight end for 2021. Outside of Kyle Pitts, of course, but that's a very bad bet to be making with those rookie tight ends historically. You want to make sure you have a player that has path to opportunity down the road. Don't need that right away. Hunter Long, if you're getting him at the very end of the 3rd, the beginning of the 4th of your rookie draft, that's a fantastic pick. Now, a player that has fallen, and in my opinion, probably has not fallen enough, is going to be Kenneth Gainwell. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit, I was excited about Kenneth Gainwell going into the NFL draft. And I know so many people really don't understand the importance of NFL draft capital. They just think that, oh, Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. Oh, Patrick Mahomes fell outside the top 5. Oh, Deshaun Watson fell outside the top 5. This must mean that NFL teams don't know what they're doing. This must mean that NFL teams get it wrong all the time. And yeah, of course, you're always going to have those players fall through the cracks. But it's easy to go through and a few years afterwards, look at a pick and go, oh my God, they really had no idea what they were doing. How did they let player X fall to the 5th round? Well, if you're actually trying to make that bet before you see the success from that player, I mean, historically, it's a horrendous bet. It is a very bad bet to make. And with Kenneth Gainwell, we only have 1 year of college to look at, so you're not necessarily going to be able to have that large sample to just completely override the draft capital that he was selected at the beginning of the 5th round. And even if you go, Mason, NFL draft capital doesn't mean that much. Mason, Kenneth Gainwell is the same type of talent that he was coming into the NFL draft. There's no reason for you to change your evaluation based on where he went in the NFL draft. And I will say, yes, in a perfect world, that is true. In a perfect world where you don't have variables changing, where you don't have really anything else to look at but the talent profile, then yes, there is nothing that you're going to be expecting to change when you see that draft capital come in. But understanding that at the running back position in particular, I mean, the running back position needs that draft capital to go with them, because Running back is about opportunity, and we see this time and time again. Those day 3 players at the running back position simply are not going to get the same amount of opportunity that you have from the guys that go in rounds 2 or rounds 3. It doesn't happen. It's never happened. Even when it does, and you have a James Robinson who has a fantastic rookie season, then afterwards, that team is not committed to him. He does not have the contract. He does not have the team investment to guarantee that long-time workload. So please understand that if you look historically, betting on a 5th round rookie at the running back position is a horrendous idea. Now, I can get behind if you really love the profile of a 5th round tight end or a 5th round wide receiver, then yes, go for it. I mean, those are the positions where you can overlook the draft capital if you're really in love with the profile. But in the case of the running back position and the quarterback position, I mean, it is so strongly correlated to their fantasy success that you simply can't overlook it, or you are going to be behind the 8 ball and making poor decision after poor decision. Now, our next player is going to be Tutu Atwell, possibly the hardest player to evaluate in this rookie draft class, because I will be the first one to admit that going into making the rookie draft guide, I was prepared to just say, you know what, we are putting Tutu Atwell on the do not draft list. We have no interest in him. The man's 155 pounds. He weighs less than I do. There's no way a player with this size can succeed at the next level. Well, I mean, diving into it, Tutu Atwell had a very impressive college career. Now, I just pictured him as a burner, someone that was going to be stretching the field. So, of course, his NFL offense was going to prioritize him a little bit more than what we should do in fantasy, because that's something that I talk about all the time. Understanding what NFL draft capital means. Understanding that at the wide receiver position, someone with more speed, someone that can play that field stretching role and can increase the overall efficiency of the offense without having the same type of volume as a slot wide receiver, those players are going to be worth significantly more for the NFL than they're going to be worth for our Dynasty team, because Tutu Atwell profiles to be the guy that can provide that value to his offense without providing value to your Dynasty team. So please understand that I am not saying blindly follow NFL draft capital. All I am saying is it definitely matters. You definitely have to understand it, and you have to use it to change your evaluations with these players. Now, that's kind of me going back to Kenneth Gainwell. Tutu Atwell, I mean, we're not even using that point. We're going to be overlooking the 2nd round draft capital because, like I said, he's a field stretching wide receiver. So it doesn't mean too much at the wide receiver position because that position is valued so highly in the NFL. What I'm going to be focusing in on is the fact that Tutu Atwell has the main 2 things that we are looking for at our wide receiver prospects. He has a great breakout age where he was able to break out almost immediately at Louisville, and he has a fantastic production profile. He was actually a highly productive wide receiver with another NFL caliber wide receiver on the offense in Des Fitzpatrick. So Tutu Atwell, I mean, he has the number 2 and number 1 thing that you're looking for at the wide receiver position. He has the breakout age and he has the production. Those are going to be the most correlated things to having that success at the next level for fantasy football. But he's 155 pounds, and that's why it's so hard to evaluate him. Now, I will say you can never consider drafting him in the 2nd round. You draft him in the 2nd round, that's a very bad draft pick. But right now, with his current ADP, if you pull it up over there on Patreon, I mean, he has an ADP of 309. I mean, so he is going at the very end of the 3rd round, sometimes slipping into the 4th. And at that price point, I think you're looking at a wide receiver that has the breakout age, that has the production, that should have a path to seeing action on the NFL football field. That's a good investment. I mean, how many other players are you going to be seeing in that range really be able to provide value in return? Now, our last player, we are going to be talking about just a slight fall. I just really want to go back to that wide receiver 2 tier because that's the hardest tier to evaluate for Dynasty drafts this year. It's going to be Rondale Moore. It is interesting to see that Rondale Moore falls behind Elijah Moore, which, in my opinion, is the correct move to make. Now, I did say that we really liked Rondale Moore's landing spot to the Arizona Cardinals because with Rondale Moore, you needed him to go to an offense that had a creative offensive coordinator / head coach that was going to be able to deploy him in ways for him to succeed. And I believe that he has that with Cliff Kingsbury. But the difference between Rondale Moore and Elijah Moore is the fact that, I mean, with Rondale Moore, he's never going to be the wide receiver 1 on his offense. I mean, you're never going to be expecting that with DeAndre Hopkins there. And in the case of Elijah Moore, he does have that potential. He does have that potential to go out there and eventually accumulate 25% of his team targets from the New York Jets. So while I like both wide receiver profiles, I think you're looking at one guy just having a little bit more upside. But in the case of Rondale Moore, I mean, still, this is a player that has exactly what you're looking for. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think I'm assuming athleticism, which he is a freak athlete, one of the best athletes that we have seen over the past 5 years. But more importantly, he was dominant in his true freshman season at Purdue. That is the number one thing I want to focus in on, because that is going to be way more correlated than pure athleticism at the wide receiver position for fantasy success. So that is why we are excited about Rondale Moore. Of course, it's a bonus that he's an elite athlete, but more so, it's because how dominant he was his true freshman season at Purdue, which should signify that he does have that elite upside at the next level. But very similar to Tutu Atwell. I mean, this is someone that we have never seen a wide receiver succeed at the NFL with this height. I mean, it just doesn't happen. At least it hasn't happened up to date. Now, I am the first person to say that these wide receivers are protected more now than they have ever been in the past. So maybe that's something that works in the benefit of Rondale Moore. But let me know what y'all are thinking here, because I think that this tier 2 of wide receivers between Terrace Marshall, Elijah Moore, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman is going to be the hardest tier to evaluate in this entire rookie draft class. And yeah, I mean, that's what I muled over so long to really go through and update our rookie rankings on Patreon, just because I was like, I don't want to have to be changing these every week. I want to make sure that we have a confident list that we can put out and don't have to switch around. So yeah, let me know how y'all rank those wide receivers, because I think it's a very difficult task. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I really owe a massive thank you for all the Patreon supporters in Ben, Braden, Zach, Ryan, William, Derek, Justin, Marshall, Tyler, and Eamon. Thank you so much, guys.